his hat down, pulled his collar up, like kind of asleep. The guy jumps up. The train left before he could. The train's chugging down the track. Ellen had a close call. Guy plopped down in the seat next to her that she had served dinner to 2 nights before. Didn't recognize her. Tried to make conversation, but finally gave up. Whew. So they continued. Got on a ship in South Carolina. Continued north. Got off the ship in Maryland. Continued north toward Pennsylvania. And everywhere along the way, people were giving Ellen all sorts of helpful advice. Like, don't take that slave up north. The abolitionists will get him. Don't take him up north. He's going to see what it's like to be free. He's not going to want to come back. And the one my favorite is, we saw him bring you something to the table today. You thanked him. You don't have to thank slaves. Don't even bother. You have to be polite to them. Okay, she just wasn't. Yep. Finally crossed over into Pennsylvania, went to a Quaker's house. From there, came north, and ended up in Boston. And people love this story. They got the close calls. They get to love these two half for each other, so they go on the lecture circuit and they tell their story over and over and over. And it gets into the newspaper up here, and it got into the newspaper down in Macon, Georgia. If you look at old newspapers from the 1800s, there's a lot of filler in there. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, so-and-so got married in Cincinnati. Nobody knows him here, but filling space. And that's what happened. People down south, you can imagine how they felt when they saw that story. People on that white train car, William and Ellen's former enslavers, imagine how they felt. I don't know, chump might be a good word. So, by that time, there's something they could do about it. Who can tell me what happened in 1850? Yeah, Fugitive Slave Act. So listen to this one, and you'll have an idea. If you hear about this in class, you can raise your hand and impress your teacher. But the teacher says something that's not correct. Don't correct the teacher. I learned the hard way. They remember that. Fugitive Slave Act. People in the South could always send slave hunters up north to chase down freedom seekers. Fugitive Slave Act is federal law. Now it's saying federal law is telling localities, slave catchers come to your jurisdiction, you have to provide help for them. Provide police officers, provide the warrants, help them to recapture these people. It also says if you shelter or aid in the escape of a freedom seeker, even if it's indirectly, you get 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. That's a lot of money in 1850. It's about $28,000 today. So, I don't know, say you were walking down the street and you saw slave catchers chasing a guy and they said, hey, we're deputizing you, stick your foot out and trip him. He said, I'm not gonna. You just aided his escape. You could, $1,000 fine. People don't like that up here. Because, you know, it's kind of like slavers off in the distance. They know it's not right, but now suddenly they're being told they gotta help people. Slave catchers, unless they knew the person they were looking for, would have a description. And they might see somebody that's close to that, and they're going to grab them. Haul them in front of a commissioner. The person captured can't speak in his own defense and had defense attorneys, but attorneys in Boston, I imagine other cities as well, would mobilize if they found out somebody was captured to go try to help them. And if the commissioner sent this guy back to where he belonged, where he lived, he got $5. If he sent him down south and changed, he got $10. It's a little bit of an incentive for corruption right there. Lewis Hayden has had enough. He has shotguns, he has knives, he has pistols in there. And he lets everybody know, at least he starts the rumor that he has a keg of black powder in there that he's going to set off and blow this building up if somebody breaks down the door. Meanwhile, back down south, William and Ellen's former enslavers decide to send a couple of slave hunters up north. But remember, they're embarrassed. So they brag about what they're going to do. They put it in the paper down there. So of course, just like Kraft's story got into the paper down there, people got the word up here, these guys are coming. And also, at least one of the guys was known to William Kraft. And one day William Kraft was in his carpentry shop on Cambridge Street and the door swung open. And this guy comes walking in from down south. And he pretends like he's all surprised. Like, William Kraft, like, what a shock to meet you here. Yeah, what a coincidence. You know, all these states in between and several million people, and he just happens to walk into the right shop. Sure. I'm up in business in Boston. It's like, yeah, right. I've been a deputy sheriff down south. What's he doing up here? And I'm by myself. Lie number 2, because he had another guy with him. It wasn't with him. He was probably outside hiding behind a tree. And I'm staying in this hotel. So why don't you bring Ellen over some night, and we'll talk about old times. Basically, he's trying to get them together so they can catch the two of them together. And oh, also too, Boston looks like a really interesting town. Would you be my tour guide? So William Kraft knew what was going on, even though this guy didn't know he knew. Yeah, right, yeah, I'll get back to me. I'm pretty busy with work, that sort of thing. The guy left, so he bolted the door, made sure nobody was coming back, sneaked out the back, came over here. No doubt Lewis Hayden knew the second these guys got off the train what was happening. So they got Ellen out of town to a safe house in Brookline, so basically they want to keep them apart. And William Kraft barricaded himself in here with Lewis Hayden and several other men. So, and a British abolitionist visited and wrote about these guys sitting around a table. This was the night waiting for these guys to come. Wait for the men from the South. These guys were Mr. Hughes and Mr. Knight were the slave catchers. And they thought they were just going to waltz into Boston and grab this couple, take them back down south, and make a bunch of money, get their names in the papers, maybe they could do this for a living for a while. And the people in this community said, no, that's not happening. Guess again. Everywhere these guys went, from the second they came out of their hotel in the morning, the second they went in at night, they're followed by crowds of black citizens from this community, yelling at them, slave catcher, go back to Georgia. These crowds included children. If somebody told you guys you could shout at that adult over there, you're not going to get into trouble. You're going to make the most of that, right? Especially if they're slave catchers, right? They are charged with everything that abolitionist attorneys could think of to swear out warrants against them for. Smoking in the streets, spitting in the streets, swearing in the streets, driving their carriage too fast, carrying a gun in the city, defamation of character, they call the Kraft slaves, attempted kidnapping, that's what they're going to do. And they're not arrested all at once. They get arrested, they're hauled into jail, thrown in a cell. They get bailed out. There's a businessman in Boston helping them. They're back on the street. A few hours later, busted again. Into the cell they go. They get bailed out. A few hours after that, into the cell again. So, talk about malicious prosecution, but for a good cause. I like to think it was the same cop that did it every time. That was funny. They're chased by a crowd of African Americans. They're running as fast as they can go. They come to the Charles River. There's a bridge going across the river. It's a toll bridge. When you're running from somebody, you don't have time to be fooling around reaching for coins. They vault the turnstile. They get busted for turnstile jumping. These guys go to the authorities, get warrants, and get help from the local police. The law says they're supposed to get help, doesn't say when. So people in the office, apparently there's some people sympathetic to the cause up here, just let them sit and sit and sit. Come back tomorrow. Guy tries to shoot one of them. His arm pushed down by his gun in hand was pushed down by a minister we'll talk about in a minute. They're not having a good time in Boston. And they're finally back in their hotel room one evening. They're discussing what they're going to do next. This beginning to dawn on them they might be ended up going home and buying boxes in a boxcar instead of hauling these people back. And they're visited by a contingent of white abolitionists from Boston, led by the Reverend Theodore Parker. Theodore Parker is the guy that pushed the gun hand down. And he's active in the abolition movement. He knows people want to hurt him. He's not going to end up like William Lloyd Garrison did, dragged out of his office, dragged through the streets by a mob, and he certainly doesn't want to end up like a guy named Reverend Lovejoy out in the Midwest who was killed for his work. He armed himself. He's carrying a pistol at all times. Even when he's up giving sermons. Sure. You're welcome. Even when he's giving sermons in church, he's packing. And he doesn't pull the gun on these guys. He just gives them kind of a not so veiled threat. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He tells these guys, ever since you guys came to Boston, my associates have wanted to tear you to pieces. So far, I've been able to talk them out of it. You didn't know if I stopped the guy from shooting you, right? But they're getting really upset. They're getting mad. They're starting to, they might not listen to me any longer. You guys might not make it through the night. And then he left. And they talked about it. This is not going to go well. It's going to be, they don't want to be martyrs to the cause of slavery. So they went back south. Well, you know, craft are safe for now. What happens if the people down south decide to send more slave catchers up? They're not going to put it in the paper, and they're certainly not going to brag. They're not going to send people to the crafts. No. So William and Ellen got ready to go to England. Before they did, they had a formal wedding ceremony in the parlor of this house, officiated by Reverend Parker, pistol and all. And when the ceremony was done, he presented them with two wedding gifts: a Bible to protect their souls, and a big Bowie knife to protect their bodies. So the Crafts went to England. They stayed there until after the Civil War. They came back, started a school in Georgia to educate freedmen. Reading, writing, math, business. Lewis Hayden continued his work. In 1862, his Thanksgiving dinner with the governor of Massachusetts, John Andrew. He didn't go to John Andrew's house. Didn't go to the State House. John Andrew came here. The governor came here for Thanksgiving dinner. You understand the way that diplomacy works. It's important who's waiting, who comes to them. So the governor came here. Incidentally, that's one of the reasons this community was successful in a lot of things they did, because the State House is 2 blocks away. Legislators, lawmakers would come down here to buy things, buy clothing, get lunch, haircuts, they'd shave. If you're shaving somebody with a nice, sharp, straight razor right about here, that guy's going to listen to what you have to say. Lewis Hayden himself spent a term in the Massachusetts legislature after the Civil War. And among the other things he worked on was trying to get the vote for women. Passed away in 1889. Frederick Douglass was giving a speech in Washington when he heard that Lewis Hayden had passed away. And they knew each other, they respected one another. Sometimes they didn't get along, they had different ideas on how things should be done. But Douglass interrupted his speech and eulogized Hayden, saying, "Our cause, like so many other good causes, has its ebbs and flows. Successes and failures, joyous hopes and saddening fears. I cannot forget on this occasion that Lewis Hayden, a brave and wise counselor in the cause of our people, a moral hero, has laid down his armor, filled up the measure of his days, completed his work on earth, and left a mournful void in our ranks." And I can add to that. So if anybody have any questions before we go? Just as everybody got comfortable over there, we're busy on the Okay, I covered it all. There will be a quiz. No, there won't be a quiz at the end. Okay, so we're going to go back up this way, and we're going to come to a pretty long hill.
Any idea what happened to the 2 slave catchers?
Well, one gave an interview and complained that the way he was treated up here, but he left out the turnstile jumping. You don't want people to know you were chased by black people. Nobody's going to hire you in the future, right?